Good morning, everybody. Leslie Myrick here, interior designer and business coach with the fabulous Nancy Ganzikoffer. This is Message Mastery Monday, and we are here with Masha Quinn from contentvertical.com, killer copywriter and genius with words. So thank you for being here, Masha. Good morning.
Thanks so much for having me, Leslie. Awesome to be here. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. A little sleep deprived. I have
Yep,
children that didn't sleep, but such is life as a business owner. You still show up and make it happen.
that's right.
But I am excited about this topic today. I'm excited about all our topics. I say this every time. I'm a broken record. But what you're going to tell us about is how to audit your website messaging like a pro and how to do it yourself. What
Yeah,
you look for in
exactly.
someone's copy. And we're talking specifically on messaging, copy, the words on your
That's
website.
right.
There's, of course, so much more involved in a website than just that, but that is your zone of genius. So tell us a little bit about this.
All right, perfect. Yes. So you pointed it out right that we're looking just at content and not so much at the website because obviously there's so much at stake when you're looking at a website holistically. There's visuals and fonts and branding elements, but today we're focusing just on content. So I was thinking I would take you a little bit into my business and kind of share my own process in terms of how I
Okay.
look at an interior design. Obviously, I have interior designers coming to me for website audits. I know as part of your Profit Insiders group, I do audits all the time for your members. So
Yes.
here are a couple of steps that I go through when I'm looking at your website messaging. But before I do that, so before I even look at your copy, here's what you need to know or be clear. Obviously, you know these things, but here's what you need to have clarity on. Who is your target audience? And this is, a no-brainer. Like we all know this is where you need to start because your messaging has to speak to your ideal audience. So before
Yeah.
anything happens, before we're even looking to kind of analyze your website messaging, we're looking at who your audience is, your target audience. What are their pain points? Or their desires, or both, because at the end of the day your website messaging has to speak to what they're feeling, what it is that they want at the end of the day. So we're looking at pain points, we're looking at desires, we're also looking at hesitations and concerns. And I feel like we've spoken about it in a couple of
Hmm.
lives before where, what do your clients worry about when they're either hiring an interior
Yeah.
designer or throughout the project? And investment is not the only thing that they're worried about. There's also, how much hand holding there's going to be. There's also, what kind of process do you have? How involved do I have to be? So things like
Yeah.
that. So be clear on those things. So we've got desires, pain points, hesitations, the kind of questions that your copy will need to address. Um, all of that has to be communicated in your website copy. So these are the elements that we need to do or to have clarity on before. And one last thing I'm going to say is you want to be clear on your differentiator. What is it? What is your secret sauce? What is that thing that separates you from every other designer
Do you
out
have
there?
any tips on helping designers find that? Because that's something that we all hear. Like, what's your differentiator, your unique selling proposition? Nancy always says niche is rich and broad is broke, meaning you got to
Yeah.
niche down, you got to get specific. When it comes to copy, I think people are afraid to sort of own that and say, this is my thing. Any tips on how to word it, write it, discover that so that we can have that really strong differentiator in our website copy?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's the way where it starts is knowing your audience inside
Yeah.
out. So being clear, I feel like your differentiator starts at being clear on who your audience is. Who do you want to work with? Like if you were to like my differentiator is I work with designers, but I also have a process that's different from
Hmm.
other copywriters. So I kind of differentiate by niche, but I also differentiate by how I do things. With interior designers, I feel like if you've ever had an ideal audience, like let's say you've worked with a dream client or you know of a dream client, you know who you would love to work with, always keeping in mind that client or that person, that ideal audience. And all of your messaging needs to speak to that ideal audience. So writing as if you're speaking just to that specific person. So then when you know your ideal client, also know, you have to know what it is that they want. So
Hmm.
doing a bit of in-depth analysis in terms of what do they want, what are they afraid of, what kind of pain points do you have, and then thinking about what do you bring to the table, because your differentiator ideally will need to align with what it is that ideal client wants. So if they are into, they absolutely appreciate like a in-depth process
Mhm.
where you can manage the entire process from start to finish, because obviously process is a big one for as far as different differentiators. You can also differentiate by aesthetic. I don't know what is it, but in the last few months I've seemed to be getting clients, interior designers,
Mhm.
who differentiate by aesthetic, which is so cool, because in the last year, it was always about with the process. The process was the main differentiator.
Yeah.
But lately, it's the aesthetic that brings. So, for example, one interior designer was all about like this British aesthetic. Another one is the bold and dramatic. So, think about that. So, obviously, when you know your audience and you know what they want, what they're attracted to, what appeals to them, and then thinking about what kind of skills do you have that kind of align with what your audience wants. I know it's like a lot of words, but in reality, it's very hard to do that.
It
But yeah,
is.
I would start there, getting clear on your ideal audience, what it is that they want and afraid of, and pain points, and then listing all the skills that you have. And I even one tip that I've given to my email audience is write out your entire process, like
Mhm.
step by step, and then go inside those little steps and break it down into mini steps and think about, well, how is this different? How are my steps that I go through different from what others do? And then you can find that differentiate in one of the steps.
That's interesting. And I love, Masha, that you pointed out what makes you different in your brand and in your copy has to be useful to your client or something they would appreciate. Like that's
Absolutely.
one of those moments. But if you're like, I ride a unicycle while designing interiors, like great, that's different, but nobody cares and it's not helpful. But if you can figure out, is there a client pain point that you really touch on, and that's what makes you different? Or like you said, if you actually take the time to list out your process, which is
Yeah.
just good business practice, by the way, getting it out of your head
Yes,
and into an SOP,
absolutely.
there might be something along the way that does set you apart as a designer that might not seem so obvious. I think it's tough to write copy and work on this kind of messaging because we're so close to it, because we
Absolutely.
know our process, we know our business inside and out, and we're like, yeah, this is just what we do. So I love this idea of let's step back for a minute. Let's actually figure out what is the process, what makes us different, how can we put that in our
Yeah.
copy, how does that attract our ideal client.
The thing that I'm going to add to this, though, we think so we're close to our process. The thing
Mhm.
is, we think like writing out a process and talking about a process, or the process being your differentiator, you think, well, like every other interior designer has the same process. Maybe so. It's second nature to you, but not to your clients.
Yeah.
So that's important to keep in mind, that what you think is common sense to you may not be to clients. That's why when my clients, when we talk about like their services page or their process page, I'm like, okay, so tell me what happens during discovery call. And they're like, well, like what, like, like the
Yeah.
thing, like, we talk about what they want and how do they like to experience place. I'm like, no, let's get granular. You don't like, how do you,
Yeah.
and that's where I come across like really copy gold, like, well, my clients love to have morning coffee in that specific place of the house. So we really get like deep down and personal
Yeah.
into your client needs. So writing out your process is so helpful, because you stumble on things that you think is second nature to you, but maybe that aha moment for your clients. I'm like, oh, I didn't know you do that. I didn't know you want me to like think about this or that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's
So
that's
so
great.
hopefully that's helpful. So yeah, so being clear on your differentiator, on your audience, and on their pain points and desires. So once we have that information and all the questions that need to be answered,
Mhm.
the last thing that I do before I actually audit is map out a client journey. So when I get, as a prospective client, when I get to your website, what questions must be answered? How do I want to take my ideal audience on a journey? So when you get to the homepage, what do I want them to read? How do I want them to consume this content? And where do I want them to lead next? So thinking through that journey. So once you're on the homepage, I want them to learn a little bit about me, like who I am as a designer, my differentiator, what it is that I bring to the table and the value that I bring to the table. Then I want them to get to know my process, and then et cetera, finally to the final call to action. So I map out this journey, and that helps me to immediately know what are the pages that I need to have in place and the messaging that needs to be kind of to address my clients' questions and hesitations. And then what's that call to action that I want? So once I have that information in place, that's when I start to audit things. So we're auditing from the very top. At the very top, we see the menu. It has to be clear. You don't want to like throw some clever stuff there. Like I know designers love to like name their blog something interesting. But when you do clever over clear, you make them think. And as soon as you make them think, it leads to inaction. It leads to like, what is this again? What am I clicking on?
I love that you said that. Don't have that be your differentiator.
Yeah,
Make your
seriously,
website
no.
navigation just say what it is. It's
Yeah,
your
you're not
product,
trying
it's
to
your
win some type of
services.
award for the best website or whatever. It's great to be clever, but there are certain spots where you want to be clever, but not in your menu. In your menu, I don't know, with humans, the way it works is like we are used to seeing specific things on your website. We're used to seeing a homepage, we're used to seeing a services page, about page. As soon as you start getting too clever, you're making your ideal audience kind of hesitate and pause.
Yes.
And as soon as they pause, they're probably not going to commit to clicking on the button, because believe it or not, that requires like a mini commitment to click on the button and to go to an extra page. So
I've heard the phrase "a confused mind says no."
Yes,
Like, if they're
100%.
confused,
Yes.
if they're unclear, they're not going to buy from you.
Yeah.
They're not going to understand you, and they're going to move on. So when you're auditing your website, that's such a great point, Masha. Clarity has to come before cleverness.
Yeah.
Even though we all want to be clever and fun and do a little bit different.
And you should, and you could be
Yes.
in your, portfolio descriptions, get the storytelling and all the things, all the interesting things, or, fun facts on your about page. Absolutely. That's where you could get clever and showcase your personality and, character and all the things. But when it comes to your menu, it's, clear over clever for sure. So we start at the top. That's where the menu is. The next big thing that we see is the main headline. That has to grab your attention. So what I suggest, your headline should either communicate that big promise, the desire that your target audience has, or your differentiator. And like I said, hopefully it does align with what your clients actually want. Yeah. So the big job of the headline is actually to grab your attention or your audience's attention and to move them down below. That's the biggest, like it has literally one job: to make them want to scroll down.
Okay.
Yeah.
And let's talk about the headline for a second.
Yeah.
I know this is getting a little bit more into website design, but I know many designers love just having a hero image and no copy.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing from a copywriting perspective, yes, of course, show your beautiful image, but you need to have words there. You need to be describing who you are, what you do, who you serve, how you're different, whatever that might be, right above the fold, as it were, right at the top of your page.
Because we know that, what is that saying? The picture is worth 1,000 words. We know that, and your work probably speaks for itself. But we want to provide context. We want to provide context for your audience, because while a photo is beautiful and it's, captures somebody's attention and maybe aligns with their aesthetic that they want, it doesn't provide all the other questions. Like, for example, if your differentiator is process, the picture is not going to tell them that you are like detail obsessed, or you're like a pro at kitchen design and all the things about it. Or I don't know, like I'm making things up on the go, but you need to provide context, and the copy needs to work together with your visual always. So I feel like it's a huge missed opportunity, but I know why some designers are doing that. One reason is because they think a picture is worth 1,000 words, and the work speaks for itself. But the second is, I feel like they're looking at high-end designers that can get away because they already have brand exposure. They already have, huge audience, and you can't simply compare where you are with really known designers that can probably get away without copy. Like I've seen high-end designers that have zero copy on their website.
Mhm.
And you kind of leave your audience wondering, well, how the hell am I going to work with you? Like, what's the next, like, how do you want me to work with you? If I want to hire you, how do you, and there's like no contact page,
Yeah.
no nothing, one tiny email address at the bottom,
Yeah.
and that's it.
And
Yeah.
that is where a few designers are, but that is not where the majority of designers
Yeah,
are. We
absolutely.
need to make
If
it
you're
clear
there,
for people with our
wonderful.
words. Yeah, exactly. If you're there, go for
Amazing.
it. But
Yeah.
okay, we've got
But if you are trying to get to know your audience, give them context, give them information about you, like help them
Mhm.
fall in love with your brand. Words can do that. Words plus images can do that.
So after that headline with
Yeah.
some sort of hero shot, what comes next on the homepage?
So we've got a call to action, and this one I look individually. If you
Okay.
sometimes your above the fold does not require a call to action, but oftentimes it does. So you want to provide that next step. You want to. It doesn't have to be reach out right now, because sometimes it's a little bit premature. If your
Mhm.
headline just communicates one thing about your business, it's too premature to get them to reach out. The most the kind of my favorite call to action above the fold is learn more about our brand story or learn about how we work. That's the logical step. You want to take your audience on a journey. So the
Mhm.
next, so you caught their attention. Where do you want me to go next? Typically it's your about page or your services page. So so we've got headline, we've got call to action. And then as soon as we go down a little bit, social proof. You need social proof. You need that trust boosting element on your website. And social proof can be so many things. It's,
Okay.
featured in, heard or seen in, publication badges, house beautiful, customer testimonial. That's
Gonna
another
ask about
really,
that. If you don't have press, do customer
yeah,
testimonials work in this place too?
absolutely. Or years in service, like how many years, if you've got a designer who's got 3 decades of work, that's an amazing social proof. So definitely put it in there, because what that does, that immediately flags to your website visitor, oh, I can trust them. I can
Yeah,
trust them because
they're
I'm
legit.
either seeing industry publications or customer testimonials or years in business, and that signals to your clients credibility and authority. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. So we've got attention grabbing headline, compelling social proof. Then we've got calls to action. And then the next thing is your location. I can't tell you how many times I get to somebody's website and I do not see location.
Mhm.
With service providers like myself, I can get away with that because I work with US, with Canada, with UK. But as a local interior designer, you have to have a location. And that's often a missed step on the homepage.
Yeah,
So
and I
that's
want to be
another,
clear too. If you work from a home office, I do.
yeah,
You do not have to have your home address as your
no,
location. Service
no,
area, neighborhood, town, region,
city,
whatever is
yeah,
exactly whatever is appropriate for the area, the demographic you're serving.
yeah,
But don't let the fact that you work from home hold you back from listing where you are on your website, because you're
yeah,
right. This is we know, even we do local projects, and I think a lot of us do virtual, but I say there are very few designers who are only focusing on virtual.
mhm,
Almost everybody is looking for local business, so
yeah,
that's a huge point, and it's one of those like duh things, but it's true.
yeah.
You go to so many designers websites and you're like, where are you located?
Yeah,
Or
you don't want to make your website visitors look for that information.
yeah.
That's the first thing that they need to see is your location. And also, like one of the other things that I mentioned is who you are. So you know how on the homepage sometimes you have like a little snippet about you. That's
Hmm.
a great thing to have because if I have to go to another page to see who I'm working with, because at the end of the day, it's a human to human business.
Yeah.
So your clients want to immediately see if you've got like a company name, they want to see, well, who is the human that I'll be working with? That's
Yes.
what you want to give it to them. It's one of the hesitations. You want to address it on the homepage. So we've got attention grabbing headline, we've got location, we've got a call to action, social proof. And then one thing I will say about call to action, you don't want to lead with with a generic call to action. Contact us, reach out to us. That's too generic. You want
Okay.
to include a compelling call to action. And a compelling call to action, it's kind of like a mini promise that you're making. Remind your website visitor of that differentiator that you have, or the value that you provide to your clients in your call to action, because that's going to make them want to take that extra step and reach out. You want to give them a reason to reach out. So
So
that's
is this a
that's where.
place you can be a little more clever?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and because it's actually it's fun to show your personality in calls to action.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So we've got that. And then I've got SEO, of course. I'm not going to say too much on SEO, but at least be clear about the keywords that you're trying to target. Oftentimes it's interior designer, location. It's
Mhm.
as easy as that, unless you want to, you want to be known for like as a kitchen designer or as a bath designer, things like that. So be clear on the SEO keywords. But the other few elements that I want to kind of talk about is
Mhm.
site-wide essentials. These are just must-haves, but they're not page specific. So
Okay.
easy to navigate menu. We've got all core pages in place. How many times have I gone on a designer's website and I don't see either an about page or a services page?
Mhm.
Services page, it's such, to me it's such like, it's common sense. Like, you want to tell your audience what's it like to work with you, but oftentimes I see that information crammed on a homepage, and that's not a
Okay.
good location for that information. On the homepage, all you have is a snippet on the services. Yeah, this is what it's like to work with me, and then learn more or explore our services. And that's where you provide on the dedicated services page a lot more, or your entire step-by-step process. So definitely having your core pages in place,
Mhm.
audience centric language. So more about them than about you, because at the end of the day, people care about what they want and not so much about you. I know it sounds horrible, but people are, they have their challenges. They visit your website because they want questions addressed. And
Yes.
you want to talk to them in a way that makes them feel seen, heard, and understood. So audience centric language, that's as simple as having more you than we and us.
Okay.
And that's, yeah, so that's very simple. And then, clarity, we already spoke about, clear differentiator. And last thing that I'm going to say, explicit value of your services. So rather than just talking about, the services that you provide and describing your process step by step, but what value does it bring to your client? How does it make your client's life easier? So being explicit about that.
I think that's great. It's not just here's what we do and how we do it, but then there's
Yeah,
the and here's why that matters. And here's why you
exactly.
should care about that
Exactly. Yeah.
because of what it's
So
going to
I
do.
know it's a lot, but it just shows you that the way you look at your website, it has to be strategic. You're
Mhm.
taking your website visitors on a journey to that ideal, call to action to
Yeah.
reach out. And in order for them to want to click on that call to action, you have to take them on a journey, address their questions, catch their attention, maintain their attention, all of those things.
I think that's great. And a self website audit, I think, is a great place to start because if you
Yeah.
can have this checklist about what you need to take a look at and look at it with a critical eye,
Yeah.
I'm sure there are a lot of us out there who will go, oh,
Hmm.
okay, I can fix that. I can add this. And those little changes do matter. Masha, if someone needs help beyond the DIY perspective, tell us a little bit about what it could look like to work with you for this.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you can go to my website, contentvertical.com. There's a ton of information about me and how I work. But essentially, I have a 6-step process in terms of how to work with me if you wanted to hire me for a website copywriting project. And it does everything from research and strategy and discovery, to the biggest element in my process is client interviews. That's how I built my process, by talking to your clients. When I interview your clients, and I don't position them as interviews because that scares
Mhm.
people off, but it's just friendly chats. But when I talk to your clients, I get to know their pain points, I get to know their hesitations, the concerns, and and more importantly, I get to have amazing client testimonials that are, evocative, not just,
Yeah.
well, I enjoy the process of working with such and such designer. I really get in-depth audience profile. And then from there, I do competitive research and mapping out your client journey, and then finally writing and proofreading and all the things.
So it's thorough. I mean, that is a great differentiator. I've never heard of anybody who actually reaches out to a designer's clients to get the words right from
It's
their
so
mouths.
important. I
Yeah.
feel like it's one of the most important things because at the end of the day, your website needs to speak to that one specific client. And
Yes.
how will it speak if you don't know, the language that resonates with them, the ideas that resonate with them, the desires that they have. So client interviews, that's why the way I position my website copywriting projects is always it's rooted in audience research. So
Awesome. Well, Masha, thank you. Before we go, can I have you read out one more time? Because I know we've been going around
yeah,
on it, but it's been such great information. So, what are, if you're going to do a
yeah.
self audit, what are the things to be looking for in order? And I know we focus mainly on homepage here. So, let's start with all that.
Sure. Okay. So before we even start with a self audit, before the audit, you get clarity on who your target audience is, what are their pain points, what are their
Mhm.
desires, hesitations, the questions that they want to have answered before they reach out. You also want to be clear on your differentiator. What's the value that you bring to the table? And ideally, your differentiator aligns with what your clients want. And then you map out a user journey map. So how do you want to take your ideal clients on a journey to that call to action? And then when we're auditing your website, we're looking above the fold. So we've got the clear menu, we've got a compelling headline, we've got a call to action, we've got social proof, which is customer testimonials and press and all those things. And then below the fold, we've got compelling, not generic call to action. We've got SEO, location, and then site wide essentials. We've got easy to navigate menu, all core pages in place, audience centric language, clear over clever, explicit value of your services to your audience, and emotional connection is the one thing that I didn't speak about. But once you have all those elements in place, you do make your audience feel seen, heard, and understood, and that's where emotional connection comes in.
I love it. That is a ton of
It
information
is.
and a great way to start looking at your website more critically and making sure that your messaging is going
Mhm.
to attract and align with your ideal client. So, thank you, Masha. We
Of
appreciate your
course.
expertise, and we'll see you back here next month.
Thanks, Leslie.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.